Hello, and welcome to our special Nurses Week and National Teachers Day live broadcast. I'm your host, Justin Crow, Vice President of Education Programs and Partnerships at Providence. As a reminder, the information provided during this event is for information purposes only. If you have any medical questions, please reach out to your primary care or healthcare professional. Now let's begin. Joining me today during this live event is Shelly Granger, nursing faculty at the University of Providence, and Monica Kidder, nursing curriculum coordinator at Covenant School of Nursing. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, Justin. Thank you.
I'm Monica.
So today's broadcast is focused on the intersection of education and health. And education is an essential component of Providence's vision of health for a better world. Providence has recently deepened its investments in education, and this renewed focus is really a continuation of the work of our founding sisters who focused on health as well as education when they settled in the Pacific Northwest in California over 175 years ago. Additionally, I wanted to highlight that Covenant School of Nursing, which is part of the broader Providence family of brands, has been around for over 100 years. So there's a strong legacy of education there as well. So why don't we get started with our questions? The first question is for both panelists, and Monica, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about why you're passionate about both nursing and education, and what was the journey that led you to your current role?
Oh, thanks for having me, Justin. I am passionate about nursing because of the positive impact that nurses have on others. Nurses offer support, dignity, and comfort to all of our patients and their families, whether they are entering the world or they're leaving it. And nursing as a profession has just an amazingly wide variety. If someone has an interest in some sort of specialty, there's likely a professional nursing organization available for them. Nurses who love medical surgical nursing can become very specialized and even certified in this area. And these same opportunities exist for those who wish to specialize in different areas, such as nursing research or like my area of nursing education. And nurses, truthfully, we're challenged, and in fact, we're required to be lifelong learners. And as for my journey, believe it or not, it's been almost 25 years since I graduated from nursing school for the first time. And during my career, I have worked in labor and delivery, medical surgical nurses, and I've held some nursing leadership roles. And 12 years ago, I had the opportunity to teach in an online program, and I found that I really loved teaching the nursing students and connecting with them. And nursing educators, we have this great power. I mean, we influence others and have an impact on the future of nursing. So as curriculum coordinator at Covenant School of Nursing, I am privileged to work with a team of educators with like-minded goals. We adhere to the same mission and vision, and that is to provide quality nursing education that is focused on caring for the whole person.
That's great. Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, thanks.
Shelly, what about you?
Well, education has always been a focus of mine. I've loved to teach from the time that I found out that I actually had some knowledge that other people maybe were lacking in. And so for me, I was a respiratory therapist for more than 20 years and loved teaching the nurses cardiac rhythms and advanced cardiac life support. And I wasn't really planning on changing my career path, but I encountered a nurse that had a pretty big, or I should say, a knowledge gap of things that I thought that she should know. And so I went to my boss that day and said, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to be a nursing educator, and I want to make sure that every nurse that I teach will have that knowledge that I feel that they should have. And so I started my path very quickly, retook some classes, and within 2 weeks of finishing my bachelor's degree, I started my master's degree and was teaching very quickly right after that. But I wondered, would I miss being a respiratory therapist, or what would I do? But nursing draws you in. It's a passion for people to care for folks really at their most neediest time or their most vulnerable time. And like Monica said, there's so many different avenues that you can choose. If you don't like long-term care, you can be an emergency room nurse. If you don't like emergency room nursing, you can be a hospice nurse. There's just lots of different things, or you can be a nurse in a doctor's office. So there's just so many avenues to fit so many different learning styles and what you want to do, and to really be passionate about your career that you've chosen. And so I've never regretted the change in my career path. And so here I am. I'm teaching nursing. I'm doing what I love to do, and I get to do it with some great people.
Thank you, Shelly. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear both your responses, that intersection of teaching and healing. And I think that really aligns with our broader commitment at Providence and our affiliates, which is a commitment to both the teaching and the healing ministry of Jesus. So Shelly, I want to follow up with you. Tell us more about the University of Providence location in Lewistown, Montana. What programs do you offer, and what's unique about that site?
Sure. Lewistown is a nice little gem of a community that's located right in the center of Montana, and it's fairly rural, has a nice little hospital, and it just so happened that Providence worked its way, that as the local nursing program that was here prior to us pulled out of the community and really left a gap to fill that need. When you're a rural community like we are, you really have to, what we call, grow our own nurses and our own faculty members, really. And so it's a blessing for our community that Providence has stepped forward. We offer an accelerated Bachelor of Science in Nursing, where students take their didactic portion of their courses online, where they actually have a situation similar to what we're doing now. They see me, I see them, and we have our engagement time in class, and then they have clinicals on the ground. So currently we just have our nursing program here. We're looking to add shortly an MA program and also a surgical tech program. And we recently added another campus site in Anchorage, Alaska, that doubled really the size of our program for us. But Lewistown is a nice little community, and they love our nursing school, and they love our nurses that we graduate for them.
That's great. I love to hear kind of that story of a gap that exists in our communities, and Providence really leaning in. So thank you. I have another question for you. So you touched on this, but why rural nursing education? And why are you passionate about that?
Well, rural nursing education is different than nursing education in a large metropolitan area. For the rural nurse, it's someone that it's a really good chance that it could be your neighbor. These people, their kids. The chance that your kids went to school with their kids is high. And rural nursing education provides a need to help meet that disparity within the access for healthcare. If it wasn't for rural nursing, would nurses be able to fill the goal, especially in our rural community where we're 100 miles from an interstate or 100 miles from an airport? It's a different calling. It's a different way that you're more of a nurse generalist. You're not probably going to work in a cardiac intensive care unit. You're going to be, at one point, you could be working in labor and delivery, and then you would, if labor and delivery wasn't a lot going on, you would maybe be a med-surg nurse, or they might call you to help out in the emergency room or in the operating room. So you really wear a lot of different hats. And I'm passionate about it, that I want to have really good, well-educated nurses for the members of my community so that they can have quality health care, just like you can in a large city.
Thank you, Shelly. Monica, let's turn to you. What are the major factors that students cite in wanting to become nurses?
I would have to say that there are 3 common themes that students mention when they're asked why they want to be a nurse. And the first one, well, you can probably guess, is because they have a desire to help others, or they want to care for others. The second one typically relates to they've had some sort of life-changing event. And this may be the person who had a medical situation and they were impacted by the care that they received from the nurses or the nursing team. Or the student may have a family member that had a major medical experience, and they were perhaps involved in the care, or again, they were impacted by the care that the nurses provided for their loved ones. The third reason I would say is generational. For example, my grandmother and her two sisters were all nurses. My mom and her sister were nurses. And so, admittedly, I did try other majors in college, but I was drawn quickly back to nursing. So those are the reasons that I think people would give for why they want to be a nurse.
So what are the biggest challenges that you see as a nursing professor and a nursing leader? And what advice would you give prospective nursing students today?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges, and I think across the nation, that is faced by nursing education is that we have limitations as far as educational institutions. We know that there are more nursing applicants than we have spots or slots that are available in nursing programs. And in fact, statistically, over 50,000 qualified nursing applicants are turned away from nursing school each year just because of this limitation. There's just not space. And our space is not only limited to the classroom, but it's also limited to our clinical sites. Cities that have multiple nursing programs, they are often competing or collaborating for nursing spaces, especially in the acute care and even in the community clinical settings. And as far as advice I would give to a prospective student, I would tell future nursing students to be all in. If you are getting into nursing school, you need to know that it is very competitive to get into nursing school, and nursing school can be very challenging. It is not like history where things are more black and white. Our students are expected to have the knowledge that they're learning, but then we take it a step further and we require them to use their critical thinking and their clinical judgment, and they have to actually apply the knowledge that they're learning. We often joke that every nursing question has 4 correct answers, and the goal is to choose the most correct answer, and that's true in many situations. But I will say this, nurse educators, we are also the biggest cheerleaders for our students, and we want them to succeed, of course, and we need them to succeed. We need them to be nurses with us. So if we have a student that is dedicated and they are committed to putting in the hours that it takes for them to become a nurse, we will also be right there cheering them across the finish line and welcoming them into the nursing profession.
Well, that's great, Monica.
Yeah.
Good advice. It was good that you also highlighted the critical thinking and science component of nursing there.
Yes.
Shelly, how do you balance online didactic education with an on-site clinical focus? And related to that, do you have any other locations for University of Providence Nursing besides Lewistown?
Yeah, since our didactic portion is online, I think it's important, as in any classroom, to draw your students in or to get them engaged in the conversation. So for me, that's an important aspect, and something that I always strive for is to have the students have their input, for them to talk about, ask questions, even if it's a bad question, so that we can correct their thinking. And something like how Monica said, there's 4 correct answers, but which one is the most correct answer? And sometimes that's a learned way to think. And so if they don't talk and if they don't interact, you can't really correct that thinking. And so we have ways that within our program, we can break them out into breakout groups where they can discuss a topic, and then we can pull them back in as a group and we can discuss that as within the context of what the entire group has to think about what they've said. And I just think that our students feel like they're connected more so than they thought that they would be. But then for to have the face-to-face clinical, I'm always surprised that the students, like you asked, we have our campus in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, as well as Lewistown. And those students are bonded together, the Alaska students with the students in Lewistown, which that was a connection that I didn't really anticipate as much. But they talk, they study together. And like Monica said, for me as an educator, my goal is for them to be successful. And I really like to be successful. So if they're not successful, I'm not successful. So that's always our goal, is to make sure that our students have all the tools that they need to be successful in this incredible hard endeavor to be a nurse.
Excellent, thank you. And it's you highlighted Lewistown. It's great that we have a location in Anchorage as well.
Yeah.
So Monica, turning back to you, so nursing is consistently voted the most trusted profession. And I think that's only been magnified with COVID-19, with nurses now glorified as superheroes in some cases, which is great. So what do you think drives nurses to sacrifice so much personally for the common good?
I would have to say that many nurses, in fact, most nurses, probably see nursing as a calling. And we are called to serve, and we are called to sacrifice. And I think we're all driven by this duty to care for those, like Shelly said, who are at their most vulnerable spot. Truthfully, we can look back to the beginning of modern nursing, and there we'd find Florence Nightingale, and this is her birthday this year, this week. So she was such an advocate for change, and she was such an advocate for her patients. She was a true nurse researcher, and she was probably the first nurse policymaker as well. But she and her nurses work these long hours in definitely less than desirable conditions. But they also felt that it was their duty to care. When 2020 was declared the year of the nurse, I don't think anybody knew that we would have this opportunity, that nursing would have such an opportunity to serve in the manner in which we're serving today. Rather than running from the crisis, it seems like we're running towards it. And across the country, we see nurses who are jumping in without questioning to meet the needs of their patients and of those families, as well as the nursing profession.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It's been an amazing time, I think,
Yes.
to highlight nursing as a profession. So another question for you, Monica. How has COVID-19 impacted nursing education? I think folks don't understand how it's impacted society and our hospitals, but this is an interesting question.
Yes, that is an interesting question. Well, from the 30,000 point view or perspective, I think we first have to acknowledge that nursing is very forward thinking. And so in nursing education, we are always looking to how we can do things better. What do we need to change in order to address the changes in healthcare or the additional expectations that are being placed on nurses? Now, that being said, COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact on nursing education across the nation. Primarily, it's impacted the way that education is delivered. Face-to-face programs, like my program is a face-to-face program, and we have now transitioned to a virtual or an online program for the time being. And this, of course, has impacted both our students and our faculty, because in addition to the nursing curriculum and the course expectations, we're also having to become fluent in our technology and different online platforms that we've introduced just over the last few weeks since spring break. And to protect our patients and our students, we have also had to leave many of our clinical sites, in fact, all of our clinical sites for the time being, and we've had to transition those clinical experiences to alternative activities. But we also have become very creative with how we use our virtual simulation and our online clinical activities, all focused at supporting the student learning. But also in education, COVID-19 across the country has had an impact on our graduates, because graduate nurses have not been able to take the nurse licensure exam because all of the testing locations have been closed since mid-March. So many states have now reverted back to the practice of granting a graduate nurse license, and this allows these new graduates to begin practicing as registered nurses while they're waiting for these testing centers to reopen so that they can take their licensure exams.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
Shelly, turning to you and kind of moving with this theme of COVID-19, how would you see nursing education changing in the future as a result of COVID-19?
Well, I think that we talk more. I know that in the classes that I teach now, we talk more about public health and prevention and surveillance of disease. And it becomes a real thing, I think, for a lot of our nursing students, especially students that really have no interest in public health nursing. They've really see now the importance of what public health nursing is about. And so that, I think, will be a bigger focus and something now that is more real to them than it was in the past. In the lab, for sure, I know that once we get back in the lab, we're going to be experts in donning and doffing our personal protective equipment and how we put that on and the importance of putting it on and taking it off correctly. But I think also we will look back in history and look at a time when this is when nursing really shined. And to just, I think that we'll talk about this in many of our classes from here on out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we turn to some questions from our audience. So Shelly, I'll start with you on this one, and then we'll move to Monica. So a question from a LinkedIn member. Do you see a greater emphasis on cultural competency and a focus on kind of social racial disparities in nursing curriculum?
Yeah, that's always something that is brought into our curriculum, how we can be culturally sensitive to different areas. For us in Lewistown, Montana, that's especially important because we tend to live in an area that is not culturally diverse, and so we have to work extra hard to bring that in and to have examples of that. Luckily, since we have students from all over the United States come to our program, there are a wealth of information about how we can become more culturally sensitive and culturally aware. And so we always talk about that within our curriculum. It's built within almost all of our courses. But I think that we depend upon our students, especially students that are culturally diverse, to keep us up to speed on that.
Okay, thank you, Shelly. Monica, what about you? Are you seeing a greater focus on cultural competency in curriculum?
Yes. I actually just had this conversation with some colleagues the last couple weeks about where cultural sensitivity and concepts of ethics are included in our curriculum. And for us, it does start with our first course, and it is threaded all the way through our curriculum. In our first course, we start talking about just caring and being culturally aware of, how do people respond to being looked at in the eyes or touch, or are there some dietary needs or dietary considerations for different religions. So same thing. Yes, people are becoming very aware of the need to be sensitive to different people's culture, race, religion, lifestyle, family makeup. It's definitely part of every curriculum now, I would say.
Thank you. Here's another question from the audience. So what we focused a lot, and I think in the media you see a lot of focus on compassion and the caring component of nursing. But there's also the science part, and Monica, you highlighted this earlier. So what excites you about the science part of nursing? Well, Monica, let's start with you and then go to Shelly.
So as far as science, I am very big on data. And so I like to look at the data behind the science. And I think, it used to be that we would just do things because nursing was told, this is the way you do your assessment. And now, even from when I learned how to do an assessment, there's certain procedures that we don't even include in the assessment because now we have data and we have evidence to back that's no longer a reliable part of the assessment. So I would say that evidence-based practice has become huge in nursing, and because we need to use, and this is happening right now with COVID-19, is we have to track the data, and then we have to be able to justify or prove that the interventions that are being used are actually having a positive effect or impact on whatever we're trying to resolve.
Thank you. Shelly, what about you?
I'm a big science person. When again, I was a respiratory therapist, and the difference between respiratory education and nursing education is respiratory is medically based, and so it was a difficult transition for me to think past that that medical base. This is what the patient presents with, and this is what's wrong with them, and this is what we need to do about it. And so I think that nursing does a good job of being cognizant of what's going on and understanding, because you say you want to be a good nurse, but if you don't understand what's going on, we're the people that are at the bedside for the majority of the time. And if you're not knowledgeable in this science, and as Monica said, knowing what the evidence says about what's going on, that's not going to treat the whole person. So I think that to be able to care for someone, you need to be able to know what's going on and the science of it. And she said it's difficult for students that are used to getting straight A's in anatomy and physiology and chemistry, and then they come to nursing and they're like, what? I don't have an A. I'm getting a B in this course. And it's a difficult sometimes transition to say, you understand what the kidneys do, but what ramifications does that have for the entire person? And that's where you have to really clinically reason and think out what is going on. And that's what makes a good nurse, is a nurse that can clinically reason, look beyond what they're just seeing to understand really what's going on behind the scenes. And that's where, to me, the science comes in at.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you, Shelly. I think both of you highlighted, the importance of the science, and I think that's sometimes missed. It feels like nurses have this amazing competency set, which is an intersection of compassion and science itself, and that's not something that I think a lot of folks in the United States have. So, thank you. Well, I think we're out of time for questions, so I just want to thank both of you for joining us today, and everyone for listening and sending in your questions. So to learn more about our initiatives, our programs, our services, and ways to give, please visit psjh.give.providence.org. And if you're looking for help or medical advice, please visit providence.org. And make sure you follow us on social media under Providence on Twitter and Providence Health System on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.